DEI has become such a hot topic within gaming and politics and so many other things. And today, Marty O'Donnell has decided to weigh in. In this article, Marty shares his thoughts on DEI in gaming and reflects on his personal experiences during his time at Bungie. Yikes, this is going to be a crazy one. Let's start from the beginning here. Marty O'Donnell, gamers must fight back. Okay. And this is from DEIdetected.com. Interesting. Website name there. We got when 35 gamers at Bungie, of which I was excited to be a part of, set out to create Halo, we did so with one mindset. Let's make a game that we would want to play. And that was actually Bungie's motto on the side of their building when I went to visit them in what would it have been 2016. They had us go out there and it was plastered everywhere. We make games that we want to play. And they had since changed that motto to something else. So they kind of had a whole cultural shift from within their studio. What does it say now? We create worlds that inspire friendship. I thought Halo had the potential to be incredibly successful, which in my mind would mean we'd sell 1 million copies and people would still be playing the game a year after the release. It was a lot more successful than that, wasn't it? I never dreamed it would become such a phenomenon that we'd see it released in its original form 25 years later or on PlayStation, but that's a topic for another day. The end of the console wars. I believe the enthusiasm for the re-release of the original Halo is large part due to the wokeification of the gaming industry. After years of gamers fighting the infiltration of DEI in the industry, we are finally winning. Interesting take. I saw firsthand the beginning of DEI in the industry. Instead of hiring people who played video games, corporations began requiring diversity at the expense of the quality of games. The corporate demand of hiring quotas meant more and more employees in charge of creating games not only didn't play games, they didn't even like video games, and they certainly didn't understand the audience. Whoa, that is a bold claim. Now, if you're wondering where does this come from and is this true for Destiny 2, there is a message here from Pete Parsons. This is an article from 2021. Pete here, he's obviously become an extremely controversial figure, but he actually mentions in this article that Bungie is incorporating DEI practices after they were kind of exposed for having some really sketchy practices, like kind of similar to that Activision exposed stuff, right? Some SA allegations and things of that nature, right? Oh, they were doing moonings. There was like people in the studio, if the studio is like layers tall, people were like putting their butts up against the glass. And I think it was in Activision. I don't think it was in Bungie, but people were doing like cube crawls where they're like crawling around in between cubes and stuff, being like, basically it was these gaming studios were functioning as like frat houses, right? There was not the highest degree of morality. It was a lot of, maybe sexually deprived bros. Anyways, it's not really funny because these types of practices are really uncomfortable for people that actually want to create games. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not how you should be conducting your company, your business. And so Pete actually had a lengthy article where he literally apologized, right? He was apologizing and he said, we have reconstituted and invested our efforts towards a stronger inclusion, diversity, and equity approach. So that's DEI, right? That's just IED. He did it the wrong. You got the order wrong, Pete. Driven in part by the ongoing conversations from our own people and the stories surfacing in our industry. These efforts include the reformation of the Bungie Diversity Committee, the creation of several new employee-led inclusion clubs, such as Black at Bungie, Women at Bungie, Trans at Bungie, Accessibility at Bungie, along with hiring of dedicated and highly respected leaders to better support our clubs, our people, and to focus on inclusion, diversity, and equity at Bungie. So this is when this whole thing began. It was from Pete, 2021. They really went all in on it. And then obviously people, they look back and say, okay, well, since they've been hiring DEI, has the company improved in their quality or have they degraded? Obviously, we're at a pretty low point right now. So I think we should be fair to the analysis and we've got kind of a mixed approach here, right? So it would have been at this point in time, Bungie hires with these DEI practices, and we still got the Witch Queen, which is very good. The final shape was very good upon launch though, all right? And this is post a DEI world at Bungie. And then it obviously has aged like milk, and we've been dealing with this, things kind of spiraling out of control right now, right? So it's been pretty problematic. So I think if you're going to say that, Bungie is hiring DEI and the game went completely to shit the moment they started doing that, the evidence would seem to not necessarily support that in its entirety, at least from population and player sentiment and content. It didn't just immediately fall off a cliff the moment they went that direction. And to be fair, I do think that, in terms of just a pure business principle, it's always better to hire based on a meritocracy. I myself, during this exact same period of time, because of COVID, had an influx in revenue from YouTube. Like YouTube was just paying people more money. So I hired a bunch of editors. I hired like 12 editors during that time, right? And every single editor I hired, I had them send me their work and I said, show me what you are capable of doing in Destiny 2. And the ones that sent me really good stuff, I hired. And the ones that sent me not so good stuff, I said, I appreciate your time, but I'm going to go with someone else. And that's just how it works. And I hired people that were very diverse. It was male, female people. One guy lived in the Middle East. Another person lived in Estonia. I didn't even know that that was a real country. I thought they had made that up, right? And so hired people from all over the world. I had to pay them internationally and pay like international fees. I wasn't bothered by that. Nothing, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. They did good work. So we paid them accordingly, and we had a great business relationship and it worked out well. We edited and made a bunch of really cool content during that time period. So I'm a big fan of hiring based on a meritocracy personally, but that doesn't mean that every company has to do things that way necessarily. And, Bungie is obviously choosing to do things differently. Bungie's motto went from we make games we want to play to we create worlds that inspire friendships. The result from forcing DEI on gaming companies were predictably disastrous. The embrace of DEI led to a stoic hero such as Master Chief to becoming a weak, self-doubting shell of the character that made him in Halo so popular to begin with. And don't get me started on that rainbow armor. These crazy changes to games aren't just limited to Halo, obviously. In Dragon Age, the Veilguard, you could have Rooks identify as trans or non-binary. Call of Duty introduced a non-binary character as well. It's very interesting. We're seeing an integration of like identity, politics, and things like that infused into gaming. And obviously there's some pushback from people that maybe see the world differently. It's, the integration of political stuff into gaming is a weird one. I really wish that gaming could exist as just this like fun escape in these crazy worlds, and maybe we don't get too bothered by all of this, but unfortunately it's like Pandora's box. We've opened it, and now there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. You know what I'm saying? We've already done this, we've added these characters, we've done these things, and so now we have to deal with where we go from here. It's hard for gamers to immerse themselves in a game when they are required to choose a body type instead of a gender and provide pronouns for their character at the start. I don't know that that necessarily ruins my immersion into the game, but okay. How did gamers react to having things forced on them by the non-gamers developing these characters in the studio? They revolted. Oh, Concord, which Sony spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing for nearly a decade, lasted less than 2 weeks on the market before being pulled offline last year. The game felt like it was created to check DEI boxes instead of appeal to gamers. It was riddled with woke nonsense such as progressive characters and pronouns. I only laugh a little bit just because every time people use the word woke, I have this like, these goddamn liberals, goddamn liberals putting pronouns in my game. Always. That voice always, every time I read, I need to start reading it in that exact voice because that's exactly what I hear. And there's nothing wrong, I think, with having a difference of opinion. I think that when we choose to believe that everything must be seen in one way and looking at things differently makes you a bigot or a bad person, you kind of create an echo chamber. One, and two, you don't really win people over that way very well. Like if you wanted to convince someone, like I'll give you an example. If you wanted to convince someone to think a certain way or to believe a certain thing, telling them that believing anything but that thing makes them wrong and a bad person. It's going to work. It's going to work for some, but not for all. You know what I'm saying? Some people are going to be very resistant to this. Some people are going to be very, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what this is. Like this whole website and this whole like movement is a very big counter swing of the pendulum here, where people are like, you're going to make me say this thing? Well, fuck you guys. I'm going to say the exact fucking opposite. Don't fucking tell me what to say, right? And don't tell me what to think, right? And so that's like, they're kind of like the two extremes, on one extreme, you have people doing things this way, and then on the other extreme, you have people doing things this way. Myself personally, and what I advocate for is to maybe, take a more balanced approach. You can understand there's some nuance to these types of things, but hey, I'm just a Titan main that eats crayons on live stream, so what do I know? It is estimated that less than 25,000 copies were sold during its brief time on the market. So Concord was an absolute failure, right? It was the worst failure in gaming history. $400 million burned. It was terrible. Simply put, it was an utter failure. And yes, it did have some of those practices. And I think it's fair to criticize Concord in that manner. I don't think it is a coincidence that Concord crashed and burned 2 months before Donald Trump was reelected to the White House. I don't understand the correlation between this, but okay. The downfall of DEI in gaming feels very similar to the 2024 elections. At the same time that gamers fought and took back the gaming industry from the woke leftists, voters fought and took back our country. They took it back from them goddamn liberals. I am happy and excited that the movement to bring fun back into our games while taking politics out of them is winning. But believe me, the cancer that infected the industry has not been fully removed. I'm just saying, look, just take a moment. I know that people are going to watch this video and they're going to go to one extreme or the other in the comment section. They're going to go to one extreme or the other in the likes and the dislikes, right? Just take a minute and just take a step back and just understand that these two ideologies are at war with each other only on the extreme spectrum. Like only on the most extreme do they hate each other. There's a good amount of people out there, I think. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just a fence rider, and that's what they'll type in the chat. But I think there's a good amount of people there that just really don't care that much about this stuff. It's not that big a deal. It's okay for people to think differently than you, and it doesn't make them wrong, right? The way that you think and perceive the world around you is the way that's how you operate. But other people have different experiences. They have a different culture. They have a different upbringing. They have a different life. You know what I'm saying? And that's okay for them to live their lives and think of the world differently. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to be like, you better think the way I think, or, fuck you, right? Like, that's just extremism. Like, we cannot be so extreme. You're just gonna live such a fucking miserable life, in my opinion. But what do I know? We can't just sit back and let you can't let these woke policies rear their ugly head again. That's why I've stepped up to run for Congress in my home state of Nevada. I hope you'll go to martyforcongress. Oh, so now he's running as a Republican. This is so good. This is so crazy. Imagine if Marty O'Donnell wins and Marty is put into Congress. Can you imagine? The former Halo composer who was released by Bungie and sued them and won, which was crazy. And then now has become a conservative politician, and he is running for Congress. Imagine he wins. And sign up to join me on this journey. I love this country, and anything worth loving is worth fighting for. And that's why gamers must continue to fight back. I hope you'll keep speaking out until these companies replace their quota hires who hate video games with workers who love video games and want to make games they want to play. We can and will return this industry we love to what it once was. So there it is. That was the article. An interesting take, to say the least. All right. And I always feel a weird energy when I talk about things that are political, because I genuinely think that talking about gaming, I get that gaming and politics, I guess they're going to be infused together, whether we like it or not, right? The political vacuum is like this inescapable one. Like, you almost don't get to be apolitical or escape it or to have an opinion and not have it be integrated into everything, right? But I do miss the days when gaming had nothing to do with politics. There was, we're playing games. I don't know what the game company's political stance is one way or the other. It doesn't mean just because you take one political stance doesn't necessarily make you in the right. Pete Parsons, for example, is the one promoting the DEI stuff, and he is kind of a shithead, right? Like, we all know Pete is pretty much a bad guy. Does that mean that all liberals are bad guys? Of course not. I think that there's a lot of nuance, and that looking at the specifics is really important, because Pete is a rich, greedy asshole that kind of screwed over Bungie, in my opinion. Pete Parsons is just a rich asshole. I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? And for me, it's more about just that. Like, that's kind of the way I approach it. I'm going to play a game if I like playing the game. I don't really worry about the politics too much, but maybe I'm different in that regard. Maybe people take a sense of pride of their political, agenda or the way they look at things, right? And that's fine too. You're not going to stop anyone, but I think that there is a valid point to be said that it doesn't matter what these companies think. The games are going to be played regardless if they're good. You know what I'm saying?